This podcast is all about giving back. No strings attached, no funny business, no get-rich-quick schemes, but simply to provide some of mine and our amazing co-hosts their wisdom, stories, and hopefully some valuable insights. Together we have the ability to grow, sustain, and provide a healthy work-life balance for all the cleaners and restorers. As this is totally free, please subscribe, write a review, and share this podcast today. Now onto the show.
Hi everyone. Hey, thanks for catching up with us again this fortnight. Tonight we have a very special guest, Dan Leschke. So Dan is in the school system of the Queensland government and has just actually participated in a workshop for management dealing with staff members, students. But I'll let you tell you who you are, Dan, sort of your background and what the workshop was about. And that's probably going to go into the discussion of what we're doing today. So welcome, Dan.
Thanks, Phil. I'm currently acting deputy principal. I've just been appointed to Proserpine State High School. The leadership course I just participated in was designed about instructional leadership and learning about the core fundamentals that you need as a leader and that you can learn and develop yourself as a young and growing leader as well, to support your staff to build their capability in their professional industry. So today I look forward to sharing the knowledge and experience and the skills I've picked up from that course and seeing how we can contribute to future leaders today and tomorrow.
I mean, that's the idea of this actually, is the contributing back. It's the giving back, isn't it? And I think that's part of being a good leader is not sort of taking that to you. It's actually being able to give that back to the new people coming up. But how do you find that with people that are a little bit older than you? How does that sort of sit with the older generation that you go to?
Yeah, look, good question, Phil. I think it's all about how you as a person handle those situations and how you want to be perceived. So I always go in with a growth mindset where I can learn from the people who have been doing the profession for years. So rather than coming in as a leader and telling them exactly, what you want, going in with an attitude where you're there to support them, regardless of age, and wanting to grow from their industry with what they're telling you. So being able to listen, I think, is a really good skill as a leader, and learning from their experiences, what's gone wrong and what's gone right. What can we do to help this industry grow together? Because as you know, Phil, the workforce that we have today, we've got a unique workforce, and I think it's important that we nurture everybody as well, and we learn and we work together as a team, regardless of those barriers that may once have been a challenge for young leaders.
Yeah, a couple good points you brought up there, Dan, was the fact that you're going in there to listen, and I suppose with listening, there's a time frame where you have to listen. There's a time frame where you sort of have to do. Yeah. I suppose we'll go into that for a little bit, and then we'll ask you a few more questions. How do they teach you on that time frame? Like, what is a good time frame? Is it a semester for school, or is it 3 months? Is it you can see there's something that's really wrong that really needs, is it sort of categorized into sections where that's a critical error that needs to be fixed? How do they sort of teach that in the education department?
Yeah, so looking at timeframes there, when you're a new leader starting at a new school, you always look at the previous annual improvement plan. So you look at the policies and practices that school has developed before, and most schools as well have an action plan as well. So they've listed their priorities that they want to address and that they want to improve on. So with regards to timeframes, I guess I've always come in with the attitude, and what I've learned from this course as well is you always look at what is the most urgent and most required fundamental aspect that you need to look at or factor to improve that in that school. And look, you can set yourself a time frame as in a goal. I'd say usually about, depending on what you're looking at, will depend on how long it'll take. So, for example, to improve staff morale and recruitment, you might be looking at a longer time frame, maybe about 12 to 18 months. Whereas something small, whereas improving the curriculum, for our students and our staff to be able to effectively teach that curriculum. You might be looking at a shorter time frame, so example maybe 6 to 12 month mark on that one. So it all depends on what you're looking at, and you need to actually structure that around your SMART goals as well, is what I'm a big advocate for, and what I've learnt from leaders as well, is looking at those SMART goals. So specific, S for specific, M for measurable, A for achievable, R for realistic, and T for timely. Making sure that you can actually achieve what you set out to. Because what I've also noticed as well is some people set goals, but they try and reach them too quickly. And that can obviously have a really poor effect on the culture that you have in the school, and it can actually go backwards. So being realistic, not trying to achieve too many things at once, because we've got so many challenges and so many barriers that we try to overcome every day. If we just try and include the top 3 or the top 2 that you want to make a big difference in, I think making sure that that's realistic and making sure that you can have people on board to try and achieve that goal. It's all about as well going to making sure that you've got your staff on board and that they're able to and confident to be able to work towards that goal.
I guess that becomes a challenge of being the new person in town too, is trying to get those new ideas and perceptions across in a manner that isn't overstepping your boundaries. You're not coming in trying to be cocky at all. And again, I'm just trying to relate this back to the small business owner, where they might have a new management team coming in to take over a certain area. They might have new staff members coming to that school or coming to that business, and it's a matter of, as you said, the SMART goals. Be specific of what you're trying to achieve. So again, it's the old. I was discussing this with you before, Dan. It's the scenario of a football game. Like it's most people have that desire to brand themselves or get the best uniform on, nice socks, the best shoes, but there's nothing as far as what their actual goal is, their end goal, what they're trying to achieve. And I guess with small business owners, it's a time crunch. Is it different between a school system and maybe a small business with time constraints when you come into a new school? Because obviously there's a lot of things especially as a deputy principal you'd have to do. So take that as a management position coming in. You're going to be busy. How do you manage your time to actually implement this procedure?
Yeah, look, that's an interesting question you pose there, because obviously, we all want to be better at time and time management. What I can suggest as well that I think might align well with small business owners as well as what you've said is giving yourself a timetable and scheduling those important events in so you can meet them. So making sure that you set that timetable early in the piece, and you also establish those boundaries with your staff about what days your meetings are going to be, what days certain events are going to happen, and activities that you can actually include your staff in your decision making as well. I think is a really big one, and setting those expectations really early with regards to when those events will happen, I think will support you as a new leader as well. So it may take a little bit of time out of your day before you arrive each day at work, or you may want to jot this down on the weekend just to give yourself some time to actually have a think about that in a quiet space, rather than going in with full guns blazing and trying to get through those things all as once. I think as well, so a really important factor in that as well that I'd like to mention too is establishing your expectations early with your staff and learning what the expectations are from your staff about you. What do you want? What do you see your leader as doing? What roles do you see them doing? And talking about time and being available to have a discussion when required, but also making sure that that time doesn't impact too much on your timetable as well. So that's why we talk about establishing those expectations early so you can function in your role successfully and your team can function as well, which is really important.
So I guess, again, as a business owner, you're not a 9-to-5 worker. It's the same as being a principal or vice principal at a school. People think that school hours are 8 till 3 and you get to go home. It's the same with a workload, isn't it, as a business owner? Like you start when you need to start, you finish when you need to finish, and you try and get in as much in between as possible. So again, your expectations have to be also measured as well. How do you measure your own expectations? I know you said you get a schedule put in place, but how do you try and make sure you meet the expectations that you put on yourself? Because obviously what your staff see in you, they relate to. So if you aren't keeping up with your own expectations and measurements, so how do you manage that?
Yeah, look, all about as well referring back to your goals as well and what drives you as a vision. So looking at your vision and what you want to do at your or achieve with your business early, I think would be really helpful for establishing your own expectations, but also reflecting each day, I think, as well, reflecting on what went right and what went wrong, or maybe every second day, just to give yourself some peace of mind about, just catching up with yourself and saying, look, these are the things that we wanted to achieve. We're not quite getting there, or we are getting there, but what else can we look at, and can we approach it a different way, looking at those factors and things that you can include. So, look, I'd also recommend a really good idea about making sure that your expectations are set is just remembering about what drives you to do what you do as well.
Yeah.
I think would be really helpful as well. So what drives you as a leader? What's your vision? What's your philosophy of your business or your philosophy of education? And making sure that you're following that each day is probably an admirable trait. Another thing as well is you can also touch base with your or check in with staff or your secretary with a small business just about about some feedback. I think would be really good. Feedback doesn't have to be negative; it can be constructive. Yeah. And the important thing about constructive feedback is you take their advice and their opinion of what they're saying, and you also think, hang on, maybe I can be doing that better, or maybe we can look at that next week as well. So just making sure that you're taking that all on board, and making sure as well that in the afternoon you do have some time for yourself, because it is extremely busy. I imagine a school is and a business is. It's extremely fast-paced environment. You're on the move all the time. So making some time out of your day in the afternoon might be a half an hour walk, it might be an hour taking the kids down to the park. Just something that will get you out of that space in a positive mind space all the time.
A great point you actually brought up there. You don't have to do this alone. You said, involve your secretary, involve somebody, involve your team around you is an important part that I'm guessing you got out of that course. Would that be right?
Yes, that's correct. Working with your team rather than against your team.
Yeah, and that goes right back to where we started. Is setting those goals initially from day dot. And you're involving your staff and your team around you so that everybody can see the same vision. I guess you're going to have people in your industry that won't see your vision at the start, but if you keep going, it's like that old thing. If you build it, they will come. It's the same thing. If you have that vision, it's a clear vision, and everybody can see the goal or the end goal, the rainbow at the end. That gives them something to strive for and to achieve and to actually grab a hold of as well. And I think that's lost a lot in small businesses where we try to do everything ourselves. We try to start a business up. We have to be everything to everybody, and we forget that you bring in strong people in. You don't have to be the smartest person in the room, but you want to be the best leader in the room if you're the business owner. That's the goal, isn't it?
Yeah, that's correct as well. And as a leader as well, what the qualities and what traits do you show as a leader and what you value, your team will then show. So, yeah, a very good point.
Yeah. So I want to go back a bit. We're talking about staff morale. Okay. How do we pump up staff morale? Obviously we're going to have staff members, they've got things going on in their days that, we would like them not to bring to work, but it's human nature to bring those to work. Before we deal with what they deal with on a day-to-day, like students for you, clients for us. How do you look at the staff morale coming to work in the right frame of mind, I suppose, to work, and leaving the same way they came in the right frame of mind? How do you work around, things like that?
Yeah, look, the biggest thing that I've learned about staff morale and the change if it is negative about staff morale is being open and being available and being seen. So, for example, I'll relate this back to in an education setting where as if you're in your office every day and you don't come out of your office, okay, staff notice that, and that also has a big impact on staff morale as well. But if you're out and about and you're meeting people and greeting people, so, for example, when school starts in the morning, I'll walk around and some of the other leadership team will walk around and greet people and say good morning every morning. And just making people see that you're making an effort to be there for them as well. But yes, look, stress.
Just on that, sorry, before we go further, I think that's a major portion that people forget about that as well. You sort of get stuck in your own little head, don't you? But as a leader, you actually have to do that. It's something you actually be mindful and actually do. So, good point.
That's right, and it costs nothing to say hello.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I think if you value that as a really admirable trait as a leader too, I think staff start to see that, and staff start to take an impact on it, and then I think it also goes towards a lot into creating a positive culture at your workplace.
Yeah.
So looking at that as well, I also just want to touch on the impacts of staff shortages, which have on stress and fatigue as well, because that also impacts staff coming into work every day. So look, some days in the education setting we have about 5 or 6 teachers down. Obviously, in the morning when staff look at that, it can also have a big impact on what their day is going to be like. So being available and going and having a chat to them and checking in is a really powerful tool as well. And also just being open to what they say, okay, but also just being able to relate yourself into their position and when you're making decisions. So how will this impact your staff when a decision is made with staffing shortages? Owning that as a leader as well, as your responsibility to look after your workforce is a really big one. I think also as well, we've also got staff counsellors as well in place with their roles and responsibilities who are available to come and talk to teachers as well, and staff who are having a challenging time. So having those people in those places as well to also alleviate the pressure from your day-to-day business, which you might be scheduled with meetings and network meetings and all these things that happens in their day-to-day lives. You can actually also ask staff for help to go and work with that staff member and go and support them to make sure that their wellbeing is available.
I guess just moving with that a little bit then is you're also involving them in the decision-making, what goes forward from that point on as well, where you're not just dictating to them, hey, this is what's going to happen. You're supporting them through that process, because the workload will shift one way or another. It has to shift because people are away. But most of the time the work still has to be done. So it is. It's a great tool if you have that mentality that every day that you say hello to somebody, someone's willing to come to you with a problem, and you discuss it openly and you share information from day one. It's a lot easier when you come into these crunch positions where everybody's under the pump, someone's away, and it's inevitable. It's going to be the worst day where everyone's completely booked up. That someone will have a day off. There's nothing you can do about that. This is the workforce, unfortunately. So that was a great point you made there. So then you've got the morales when other people are involved with, say, your teachers, with your technicians, where now they're dealing with the students, now they're dealing with the clients, and they bring the negative energy. So is there sort of plans around bringing that energy from others up, or how did that work with you guys?
Yeah, look, so at each school, it's documented in place now that they should have a wellbeing policy, a wellbeing framework for staff as well. Staff and students have a wellbeing framework. So in that framework there, you'll see various activities and events that staff can participate in outside school as well. But also it opens up a flowchart of who staff can talk to about various circumstances and various issues that are going on. Because as you said before, we all come to work with challenges going on outside in our lifestyle. So if that's impacting staff and their performance at work, I think it's a good point, a good flow chart to have available, so staff can actually say, right, these are the people I can talk to. This is the line management, someone who I can go to when I need support for this. If it's impacting you that much at work, I think it's a good point as well, is that you actually see what you can do to try and keep that staff member, working and coming to work. So there might be some changes that might need to be made, that you can actually involve that staff member in with decision making as well, to try and support them at work as well.
Yeah. So one of the things sort of we touched over but didn't really dive into was outside influences, outside events, and I guess with students learn differently. We all know that, some are visual, some need to read, some need to touch and feel, so everybody, and again, for small business owners, your staff, they all feel differently. They all react differently. The clients they're going to, they're the same. So they're going through maybe a traumatic event. We don't know about it. And there are triggers that we can look for. How do you instill in your staff members to actually have a look at those triggers and try and identify, okay, well, this isn't working. How do we change, pivot, and try something else? Is there sort of training around that as well?
Yeah, look, we provide staff opportunities for professional development in that space. So pretty much very similar to the course that I just went on, the leadership course. We open up the door and welcome staff to work on that, particularly about supporting children as well. But they can also reflect on themselves as a practitioner and within their own space as well with those professional development courses that are offered. So we offer quite a few about counselling and also trauma. Trauma is one of the biggest impacts that impacts schooling as well. So not just kids with trauma, but also staff with trauma. Our staff also come from a variety of challenges as well as what you've mentioned. So providing that professional development and those courses for those staff actually support them in that process as well, which we find really helpful. What we also ask staff to do is when they return from those courses is to actually share it with the remainder of the team. So it not only shows what they've learned, but it also welcomes the door to collaboration. And I think collaboration is quite an important teamwork skill that small businesses and education use. So the more effective you are as a team to collaborate and work together, the better you're going to look after your well-being and your results and your performance as a team.
Yeah, there's a couple folds on that. The benefit, I suppose, of bringing it back to is quite often we send people to these courses and they sort of just go there because they have to go there. Where if you say to them, when you come back, you now have to retrain that to your peers, they tend to listen a little bit better, take more notes, really grasp what's going on, to bring that back. So I think that's a really key thing. And I know we don't do it in our organisation, something that we're going to implement directly from this conversation, I can tell you that now, because it's the thing, like we bring in new staff members and they the first thing we teach them is OH&S, WHS stuff, okay? So that's one of the first things they learn. Then they learn the paperwork, the book work, then they learn, depending on what trade they're going into, so we're restoration, so that restoration side, so they learn water damage, odour, fire, mould, such and such. But they have to learn the basics as well. They have to learn PPE for your facial, what's going to your body. So I guess once we do those courses, bringing them back and having a team meeting, like a toolbox meeting or something once a week, is that what you guys do? Do you have toolbox meetings, like staff meetings, I suppose, weekly?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, very similar to that. We have staff meetings as well. But in that staff meeting as well, we try and see if we can share that information and that journey from their courses on within that. So,
and what's come out of it too? How's it made them feel? Trying to really relate with everybody. So, I mean, that's a great idea. I get this question all the time. We don't know what to talk about in our toolbox meeting. So, I guess that would be a great way to have a look at your professional development plan in your organisation, and do that as well, mate. Is there anything else that you really touched on in that course that you wanted to bring to light?
Yeah, look, I also just write this down as well. Learning about emotional intelligence as well. That's a really important thing to address as well within a school or within any workforce, really. If your staff have a high EI, there's more research is what I've found in that course is that there's going to be more likely staff are able to actually problem solve as well and fix things as a team, rather than to go down that negative journey with this is all bad, this is all doom and gloom. So having a high EI, and I'll put this to you as an example. The example that we got posed in our course was that there was a gentleman there in a full suit, and he was standing in wet concrete while someone was fixing that wet concrete. The common reaction from people is, oh, what are you doing? You're so and so, or how dare you do that? Rather than looking at that low EI, looking at that high EI, and actually trying to work out why is he doing it? What's gone so wrong in your day today that's made you stand in wet concrete and not care about what others are doing? So I think having that high EI and role modelling that from a leader, and hoping that will generate and flow down towards your staff, I think is a really effective tool and strategy that I worked out. So there's so much research about high EI as well. So I recommend if you have an interest in that area, and I think that it's a quite important thing to have as a leader, to have a look at that research and see what you can do and what you can teach your staff with that.
Yeah, I mean it's a great point as well. Is that we always. Well, we tend to always look at the negative side before we look at the positive side, don't we? So, we have to step back as leaders and actually try and take in the whole scenario of what's going on before we try and give it like our point of view across of what we believe that's going on. So that's a great point. And I think as young leaders and old leaders, it doesn't matter your age, that is a problem within the industries. There's not being able to look at things as a whole and actually get your head around and think about somebody else. So that's a great point. Anything else, Dan? Or
and one last thing is owning your mistakes as a leader. Not being prepared to put yourself out there in that vulnerable setting and saying, "I made a mistake." I think that's one of the most courageous traits that you can have as a leader is owning your mistakes and being accountable for them.
Yeah,
I think that sets, and we talk about role modelling that behaviour towards your staff as well. So your staff are more likely to say, "Yep, I got it wrong. This is what I'm going to do better next time."
Yeah. Again, I'd put that perspective of the small business owner. Staff will do things wrong. Like they're called accidents for a reason. They're not called on purposes. So if you find a staff member doing the same thing over and over again and you haven't done the training, well, then that's your fault as a leader. So it's very important to understand that they will make mistakes. It's a time to re-educate, retrain, bring in people if you need to from exterior to get that message through, because mistakes cost. And as a leader, the biggest mistake you can do is not retrain yourself. That's going to cost you the most. So, Dan, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. It's been absolutely fantastic. I think this message is underdone in most industries. I think we forget about the leadership in ourselves, the leadership in the people that we entrust, and the vision of what we're trying to set and the goal we're trying to achieve. So, Dan, thank you very much, and all the best with getting towards your goals and your vision. And we look forward to hearing from you again, actually. So thanks, Dan.
Thank you, Phil.
By assessing this podcast, I acknowledge that the Professional Carpet Cleaners and Restorers podcast makes no warranty, guarantee, or representation as to the accuracy or sufficiency of the information featured in this podcast. The information, opinions, and recommendations presented in this podcast are for general information only, and any reliance on the information provided in this podcast is done at your own risk. The Professional Carpet Cleaners and Restorers podcast expressly disclaims any and all liability or responsibility for any direct, indirect, incidental, special, consequential, or other damages arising of any individual's use of, reference to, reliance on, or inability to use this podcast or the information presented in this podcast.